Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Hoops with Coop. I am your host, Noel, and today we have a guest who was also here on one of the first few episodes of Hoops with Coop, Mr. Derik Cooper himself. Mr. Cooper, say hello to everyone.
What up, everybody? How we doing?
So today I wanted to, touch on March Madness. It's coming up. Brackets came out on Sunday. Hopefully you got your brackets in. Hopefully, you're on your little tournament challenges and stuff like that, make some money. But Derek here loves college basketball, loves college basketball. I'm the NBA guy, he's the college basketball guy. So whenever I need a college basketball fix, I go to my man right here. So I want you, Derek, to explain everyone how do you make money from March Madness? Like, what are some methods? What are some things that you look at on who's going to make it to the Final Four? Who's going to make it to the national title game? Any upset picks? Stuff like that. Like, how do you make money, and how can the audience make money?
Okay, well, that's a big question, Noel. So I'm just going to dive into kind of some of the things that you asked. And number one, I'd say, hey, look, unit control is your friend here. With kind of the way March Madness works, there's a reason why it's called March Madness, right? The teams that are favored generally have to cover big numbers, and the big numbers aren't always covered by specific teams. There's specific conferences that don't play very well in the tournament when they get outside of their conference. I've been fortunate enough to, I'm on record before this year started. You know, the team that I think will win the championship is a one seed going into the tournament. So, that team has been great all year. I think that barring an injury question that they have going into the tournament, I think there's an opportunity for them to kind of have caught a good draw outside of the two seed in their bracket, which I will crush the selection committee on here in a little bit because that was awful what they did to Houston in the Midwest bracket. But we'll talk about that later. But again, I think unit control is a key thing here. I think getting numbers early and then reminding yourself that teams aren't generally built to play games, you know, that high intensity, from a Thursday to a Saturday and from a Friday to a Sunday. And you'll see teams kind of run out of gas. You'll also see teams that play really well defensively really excel in this tournament format because they're able to kind of defense travels wherever you go, right? And I think the teams that can play really good on the defensive end of the floor and can still score some points have a great chance to go deep in these tournament type formats.
So when you're picking an upset, now I know, history always says to pick a 12 seed to win and, sometimes pick an 11 seed to win and stuff like that. Now, do you usually try to fade those or do you kind of go where the history lies?
So I think it's very much about feel in a way. I also look at roster construction, right? If you have a team that not a lot of people know about that is playing a bunch of seniors or they've got a lot of experienced leadership, um, then these are opportunities for you to kind of take advantage of the experience, so to speak, going into a tournament game. Um, I don't like putting a lot of my eggs in baskets where you have a bunch of freshmen playing key minutes in a tournament type atmosphere. One bad game from a perennial scorer that's played throughout the entire year well. And again, in the tournament, you do see some junky type defenses from lower seeded teams just because this is their kind of they're firing everything out of the barrel, trying to get that upset in the first or second round. So you do see that kind of junky type stuff. And so you look for experience. That way they can those teams can handle stuff like that.
Gotcha, gotcha. So for this year's March Madness, for me, I have not been. I used to kind of follow into college basketball. This year, for one, I kind of dipped out of it for whatever reason, whether it was my thoughts about the product or just time and just not truly focusing on it. So I did do a March Madness bracket, with my friends and stuff like that, and I was curious to get your feel on some of the potential upsets that might happen that people are looking at as though, okay, that one sounds like a good one. So What about how do you feel about a Charleston versus San Diego State 5-12 or Oral Roberts versus Duke 5-12? Because as of right now, I feel like those two are the ones that a lot of people are looking at right now as potential upsets.
So you dive right into the 5-12 upsets, right? So, I mean, we'll go through some of those. I mean, I'm a big fan of how Duke plays basketball, even though their advanced metrics don't say necessarily that they're that great of a team. Um, I felt like they were kind of overseeded a little bit. I don't think they're a 5 seed. I think they should have been more like a 7 seed. A team that probably should have been in that 5 spots, Texas A&M, given what they did this year and the resume that they put together. Um, but but Duke got essentially the brand carried them to a 5 seed, which is Duke basketball. But this is not Coach K's Duke Blue Devils in any way. It'll be interesting to see how Coach Shire handles the pressure of being in an NCAA tournament after Coach K leaving the program, and so it'll be interesting to see how Duke responds. That is a team that could get caught off guard uh, in the first day of tournament play. Um, and then, like you said earlier, the other matchup you mentioned, San Diego State versus Charleston. That's a Charleston team that can play. I mean, that team can play. They went 31-3 on the year, but San Diego State is no slouch, going 27-6 on the year. I actually like San Diego State in that matchup, um, even though Charleston probably could give them a scare early, but I think San Diego State probably pulls that one out late and gets the victory to move on.
Good, good. But do you have any top four seeds that could get clipped in the first round?
Well, um, I think there's a couple that could potentially get clipped. One of them is Kent State against Indiana. I think that's a
Mm.
team, the 4 seed in Indiana in the Midwest bracket could go down there. Um, I think I think Montana State can give Kansas State a game for about 3 quarters of that game. It'll depend on how well Montana State shoots the ball in order for them to stay in that one. Um, the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, the 13 seed in the East bracket, playing Tennessee. That team has always, and again, they've finally gotten the talent to match with the coaching. Coach Bob Marlin, who used to coach at Sam Houston State, I watched him personally put together one of the most insane triangle and two defenses against a Baylor team that was loaded as a 14 seed one year, and they took Baylor to essentially the last 2 minutes of the game, being a 14 seed, and he was entirely outmanned when it comes to talent on that roster that day. Saw that in person in New Orleans. Um, so
Loving the
I can see the Louisiana Raging Cajuns potentially giving Tennessee a tough game. And Tennessee did limp into the tournament, even though their numbers, their metrics say they're a really good team. They did limp into the tournament. They did not play well down the stretch. I think that's an opportunity for the Louisiana Raging Cajuns to pull off an upset in a 13-4 matchup in the East bracket.
loving the inside scoop with the coach. Like this is why we need you on here. It's to give the people the inside scoop as to who might get the upsets because not a lot of people know that information or know who the coach for them or might look at roster construction for these mid-major schools and stuff like that. So that's some very good insight. Um, I do have another question. How do you feel about Virginia versus Furman? Because when I think of Virginia, outside of their year winning the national title, I for some reason their style of play really bothers me. Now, once again, I admit I'm an NBA guy, so I like the fast pace. I'm not big on defense, obviously. NBA they don't play any defense, but a team like Virginia, I feel as though their pace in the tournament could either really excel in regards of stifling a good offense, but at the same time, they can get cold. I feel as though, and when they get cold, there's no going back.
So Virginia is a team I like to stay away from every year. And this is why, right? They play a style of basketball that allows worse talented teams to keep up with them on the offensive end of the floor, right? Their calling card is so reliant on being a stifling defense that if an offense can come in to a matchup with Virginia and figure out how to put the ball through the hoop, even if it's just by luck for 30 minutes of a 40-minute game, there's a good chance that team's gonna have the lead or gonna be right there with Virginia when it comes down the wire, right? It's not a situation I like to be in with Virginia. Also, Virginia has the talent on the defensive end. Maybe not this year. This year's not necessarily as loaded of a team on the defensive side of the ball as they have had in the past. But I do think Virginia is capable of being beat by Furman, depending on how the pace of the game goes. But that's every Virginia game. That's literally how they play basketball, and they're okay playing that way. And it'll be interesting to see how well they fare.
Yeah, it's just like how you said that if a team can get just lucky, who was it that they lost to it was a UMBC they lost to, right?
Yep.
It's just a
University of
team can
Maryland,
get
Baltimore County. Yep.
a lot of people were saying that was education, like the education connection schools and stuff like that. Like it was just like one of those like random schools that beat them. I will never forget that. But it's like one of those things of a team, like you said, a team can get lucky, make 44% of their shots, but if Virginia makes 39-40% of their shots, they can lose very easily. And
yeah, you're absolutely right.
it's just like, okay, they're going into a game. Let's make a rock fight. Another team's like, well, let's just counter that rock fight with a little bit of some finesse, and Virginia goes down. So I might stay away from them as well. I just don't like them. But is there any one seeds you feel as though that could be in trouble in terms of potentially losing in the Sweet 16 or sooner?
Well, the only one seed that I'm kind of concerned about early in the tournament is going to be Kansas. And that's just because. Actually, no, I take that back. Kansas and Purdue both I'm very concerned about. Number one, Kansas is dealing with a coach issue. Bill Self hospitalized, wasn't able to coach the team during the conference tournament, ultimately losing in the conference tournament finals to a Texas team. They're going to face a pretty tough second round matchup. The winner of that Arkansas Illinois game in the 8-9 matchup, both of those teams have the talent to play with Kansas, right? And again, it goes back to, okay, and I've seen Brad Underwood, the coach of Illinois, in a tournament situation. He gets his team ready to go typically, right? So either one of those teams could cause Kansas some issues. But if they're able to get past day 2 of the tournament, I think they're going to cruise to a potentially Elite 8 berth where they might have to face a UCLA or a Gonzaga in the Elite 8 with a chance to go to the Final Four.
Yeah, so is Kansas? So once again, haven't been following as much. Is Kansas a very freshman leading team, or they've kind of switched it up? Like a lot of transfer guys, a lot of upperclassmen, or are they more heavily focused in on freshmen?
So Kansas has a decent group all the way around. I would say this Kansas team has struggled to deal with some adversity, and it's been one of the Kansas teams that have been more apt to potentially being knocked off by teams that may be equally talented. Bill Self's teams just find ways to win against teams that are equally talented as them. And they haven't done that as much this year as you would like to see going 2-1 or going 1-2 against Texas throughout the course of the season. Is the one that comes to mind in particular, including losing the conference championship game to Texas. But again, that team can play with anybody, and it'll be interesting to see. Again, if they can get through the first 2 days, I think they make a run to the Elite 8 with a potential Final Four berth on the line. But another team that I'm very, kind of concerned about as a 1 seed is the Purdue Boilermakers. Purdue probably is going to catch Memphis in round 2. Memphis just beat the doors off of a Houston team in the American Athletic Championship game, right? So, Memphis can play. Penny Hardaway will have his team ready to go, and it'll be interesting to see if Coach Matt Painter can have his Purdue Boilermakers ready to go. I know they have Edey in the middle, an excellent opportunity for a Wooden Award candidate to kind of show off his talent. But outside of Edie, if they don't if Edie can't control the paint and Edie gets in foul trouble, that is a very, very, very tough spot to be in because if Edie gets off the floor, that Purdue team is not a number one seed in this tournament.
Yeah, so I've been paying attention a little bit to the conference tournaments, and I've been noticing that Memphis is just blowing the doors off of everyone they've played. Is this just one of those situations where a team is getting hot at the right moment, or have they been good all season and they kind of got screwed out of a better seeding?
I think I think Memphis is a really good team. To be frank, though, they did play Houston without Marcus Sasser, who was the Player of the Year in the American Athletic Conference. Um, if Marcus Sasser is healthy for Houston, that's the best team in the country. Okay, top to bottom, the way they play defense, the way they score the basketball, that's the best team in the country. The only team that may have something to say about that might be Alabama, but Marcus Sasser was not healthy, didn't play in the American Athletic Conference Championship. Memphis showed why they can beat teams when they aren't at full strength. And Memphis has really started to play really good basketball. I think they are a nightmare matchup for a Purdue team in the round of 32.
Got it. So wanted to touch base on a couple of teams that I looked at as maybe they could sneak into the Final Four. A couple of teams that are, a three below a three seed with some crazy odds. Odds that are 400 plus. Actually, well, I take that back because Gonzaga is a three seed, correct?
Gonzaga is a 3 seed.
So I checked on Fanduel, but Gonzaga's at plus 420 to make the Final Four. Do you think that is a good enough bet to put some dollars on that and see if Gonzaga can make another run to the Final Four?
Yeah, I would probably put a decent amount of money. You said what was the number?
Plus 420.
Plus 420. So there's a lot of people thinking like you because it's already been bet down to plus 365 where I'm looking. So there's some
Oh
people
my god!
there's some people on the same thought process as you because
I
again it
just
goes
looked
back
an
to
hour ago. And I'm like Gonzaga
let
at
me
plus
tell you
420 is
something
crazy.
interesting. Kansas and Gonzaga almost have the exact same odds to win that region, and
You're
Gonzaga's the three
joking.
seed. Yeah, Kansas is at plus 329, and Gonzaga's at plus 365.
God, I just looked an hour ago and I'm like, wow, I got these juicy odds.
Yeah.
Let me talk to Derik first and see if this is a good enough bet. I was gonna put something on it.
In fact, Gonzaga as the 3 seed has better odds than the 2 seed UCLA to come out of that region.
Oh, see, I thought UCLA would be the hot bet for that region.
Yeah, Gonzaga plus 365, UCLA plus 377 to win the West.
Jesus. So Gonzaga might not be it's not a sleeper bet anymore.
Well, again, they are a team that has a lot of experience. So that is a team that you might want to ride in the tournament because they know what to do. They've been there before. The people that are still there are still hungry to try to avenge some of the losses they've had in the last 2 years in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I hopefully Mark Few could get over the hump. I mean, it's been a tough road for them. That Baylor game, I'll just never forget how dominant Baylor was from the opening tip.
That was
And for me, that's like a lasting legacy of Gonzaga in my head of finesse, just too much finesse.
See, I look at that completely differently, to be honest with you. I think Baylor was top to bottom the better team. And I just think that Gonzaga had an inflated record going into that game against a team that was just better top to bottom. That Baylor team, the team in the tournament that reminds me of that Baylor team is the Houston Cougars. Just top to bottom, they can all play top to bottom. And if Sasser's healthy, they can light it up on the scoreboard too.
Speaking of Baylor, that is another team I had at plus 550. Now, I have not watched a Baylor game all season, but my thought process was a team with experience, a team that has been there before, a coach that has been there before, and at plus 550, is that a good bet to take?
I don't mind the odds, right? But I think you might be lighting that money on fire.
Okay.
I don't think Baylor can beat Arizona. Arizona is the team I would probably put money on to get out of that region, and
Okay.
they're plus 395. So you're getting 4-1 almost on your money to put some money on Arizona.
Is this Arizona team better than the Arizona team from last season with Matherin?
Well, I watched that Arizona team get housed by Houston in San Antonio last year, so
I had that Arizona team going to the Final Four, man. It was rough.
that it'll be interesting. It'll be largely dependent on the kind of draw that they have. If they get into a knockdown drag out with Baylor, that's going to be a tough game to win. I do think they're the more talented team to win that game. Um, but again, if they meet as the 2-3 matchup, in the Elite Eight with a chance to go to the final or in the Sweet 16, with a chance to face the overall number one seed in Alabama, you know, I think that could be a tough matchup for Arizona. And again, both of those teams coming out of that matchup are going to have to play an Alabama team that, quite frankly, is a team that no one wants to play right now. That's probably the hottest team in the country, um, and with good reason. They've navigated the SEC well, and they rightfully earned the number one overall seed. They've dealt with adversity throughout the year with some of the storylines around the program, and so yeah, Alabama. Alabama's probably the team to beat out of that region, and again, you're taking a flyer on teams to try to knock off Alabama. You're hoping that Alabama just doesn't show up one game and potentially loses before they get to the winner of the Arizona Baylor game if they match up in the Sweet 16.
Yeah. So another team you talked about earlier that you could see potentially getting upset. Now, the only reason why I have them here is because I remember in the beginning of the season watching or listening to a couple of podcasts. They talked about this team. I didn't know that they were dealing with this many injuries until you brought them up. Was Tennessee at plus 600? Now you're telling me that is a big stay away. Just Tennessee, big stay away from anything.
So again, Tennessee is a team that can play well and have played well throughout the year, but they have just struggled to reach the end of the season. They're not playing great basketball right now. You're just essentially what you're betting on is for Tennessee to kind of flip the switch at this point, right? And I just don't see that happening in the East region. But again, that's probably the region that's the most wide open of the group. Um, so yeah, I'd be interested to see kind of what the numbers look like on a Tennessee. I mean, I'm looking at it right now plus 515. I see right now to get on Tennessee. The teams that could really cause them problems. I actually like Marquette, the 2 seed out of that region, to get out of that region at 414 plus 414
Mm.
odds. So again, 4-1 odds to get out of the region. That's not a bad. It's not a bad place to be with the 2 seed for sure. And you've got a 1 seed in that region that's very vulnerable if one of their players goes to the bench.
And okay, so this is my crazy one. This is at plus 1600. Plus 1600. This team made it to I believe made it to the Elite 8 last year. I They're a 5 seed. How do you feel about the University of Miami?
That's a tough one. And here's why that's a tough one. Okay. They're in the wrong region.
Mm.
They
What do
got
you
a
mean by
terrible
that?
they got a terrible draw because essentially what you're asking Miami to do is in the Sweet 16, they're going to have to beat a Houston team, right? And then after you beat a Houston team, you're probably facing the best 2 seed in Texas in back-to-back games.
First off, I want to hear your rant about Houston and Texas.
Okay, all right.
I need to hear it. I need to
This
hear
is Let me
it.
take some this whole region got messed up terribly, and here's why. I'm going to start with actually another team I haven't mentioned yet. The Texas A&M Aggies. They were the most underseeded team in the tournament. If you look at teams ranked in the final AP poll, teams ranked from 11 to 19, there was not another team in that group of rankings that had worse than a 5 seed, okay? A&M was like the only 7 seed outlier. There were a couple threes, couple fours, couple fives. Oh, let's make A&M a 7 seed, right? Completely underseeded A&M, right? Number one. gives them a tougher draw. They have to potentially face Texas, the Big 12 champion, in round 2. How is Texas a 2 seed? Essentially, what you just said is Texas is the 7th best team in the country, right? By putting them, Houston was the 2nd overall number 1, so you give them the 7th overall ranked team, which is the next to worst number 2 seed, right? So Texas ends up in Houston's bracket, right? They won the Big 12. They beat Kansas 2 out of 3 times they played each other this year. What are we doing? The Big 12, probably the best basketball conference this year from top to bottom. Just the truth. Just stating the facts. And we put Texas on the 2 line, and then we still managed to have Kansas stay in the 1 line. That makes zero sense to me. These teams played each other 3 times. Texas won 2 of them.
So why do you think they put Kansas at the 1 and Texas at the 2? And why do you think they put Texas A&M at the 7th seed?
There's a lot of moving goalpost criteria that happens in these selection committee decisions, right? You can talk about quad 1 wins, which, again, not taking anything away from Kansas. They had a great resume throughout the rest of the season. But you could argue that Kansas and Texas's resume are similar. And then at that point, you have to go with the head-to-head. And they played 3 times. Texas won 2 of them, right? Including winning on a neutral court in rather convincing fashion. They were pretty much controlled the game throughout in the conference championship game. The Texas A&M thing, I can't explain. No idea how Texas A&M got there. I mean, the selection committee either was tired and trying to fit a couple teams into the last spots they wanted to, and here's where we're going to land with Texas A&M. Oh, they might have to play Texas in the second round. That's a good storyline, right? Whatever the case may be, Texas A&M got screwed. Sorry, Aggie fans, that was rough. All right, and then the team that got screwed over in all of that is the Houston Cougars. Now have the toughest path to go to the Final Four, and they're the best team. How did that happen? You got to think. Houston ends up in the second round, potentially playing an Iowa or Auburn team. Auburn's pretty good. Iowa's out of the Big 10. The Big 12 notoriously is terrible in the NCAA tournament. So not necessarily bad. But again, a Miami team, a potential matchup with a Miami or an Indiana in round 3 in the Sweet 16, right? So again, Miami was good last year, played well this year, made it to the Elite 8, correct? Last year. So again, it's just a tough draw. And by the way, if you get past that matchup, now you get to stare down the winner of a Texas A&M, and Xavier, or an Iowa State coming out of the Big 12, so it's not like some cakewalk for Houston to get to the Final Four. They are still the favorite to win the championship right now, but the committee did them no favors by putting the bracket together the way they did in the Midwest bracket.
So if you had to put Texas as a 2 seed still, like let's say the committee said, hey, Derik, Texas has to be a 2 seed. Would you put them in as the best second seed in the tournament? Would you put them in with who was the worst 1 seed?
They should have gone in with Purdue. They should have been in Purdue's region.
And who's in Purdue's region? Is that
Marquette?
Is that the Marquette?
Marquette is the 2 seed.
So how does that happen? How does Marquette get in the Purdue's bracket, but then you have a Texas team that knocks out your 1 seed in Kansas 2 out of 3 times, including the conference championship, and you can't even put them in a favorable bracket? I don't understand where the logic comes in to play with that one.
Now you're starting to understand why I was so frustrated on Selection Sunday when I saw the brackets get revealed. There was no rhyme or reason to it. Again, I can see why you can't put Texas in Kansas's region, right? They've played 3 times already. It wouldn't make sense to put Texas as the 2 seed and Kansas's region as the 1 seed, right? So they've got to go somewhere else. You're not going to put them – they're not the worst 2 seed, so you're not going to put them in Alabama's region as the overall number 1. So I get that they were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place a little bit, but they could have easily flipped with Marquette and gone into Purdue's region. You're essentially saying that Marquette's the best 2 seed of the group. I think if you asked Vegas if Marquette and Texas played on a neutral floor, Texas probably favored by 4.5 when that game tips off.
So would you say Texas and Houston are probably two of the best four teams in this tournament?
I would say Texas is probably the fourth best team in the tournament. Yeah,
Wow. So the committee really messed this up. Really messed this up.
they seeded them like they're the seventh best team.
And they just won a
What's
they
worse
won
is
a conference
they seeded
championship.
them like they had the seventh best resume, which is also the insulting part. They seeded them like they had the seventh best resume as the Big 12 champion.
Was the Big 12 championship game that Sunday or was it Saturday?
It was Saturday.
So they watched that
It was
game and then
Saturday
they just
afternoon, and Texas basically had a double-digit lead the entire second half.
so pretty much they watched that game and then completely forgot about it going into Selection Sunday.
Yeah,
That has to be the case. Like they watched the game and then just completely forgot it existed to make that call.
yeah. I can see that being what happened for sure.
So do you have any like odds or do you have any like below a 3 seed that could potentially make the final four? Do you have any just like crazy picks of a certain team going to a Sweet 16, a certain team going to an Elite Eight? Like, give me your crazy predictions for March Madness this year.
Okay, here's the teams I'm telling you to get on now as teams with good value that could potentially win it all. Okay, Arizona, 13.5 to 1. You need to put money on Arizona to win the championship at 13.5 to 1. All right. Another team that I think has a really good shot to win it all. And again, this goes back to can they get over the hump, right? I like Kansas at 10 to 1, right? Kansas right now is 10 to 1 to win the championship. And then a team in Gonzaga, I think, with all of their experience, might have a team that could do it this year. In and they're 14 to 1 right now, like plus 1435 is the number currently. Um, I think it's going to be a very chalk Final Four. I think you're going to see 2 1s, maybe a 2, maybe a 3 in the Final Four.
So you were talking about Gonzaga. Would that be crazy that if Gonzaga wins it with this team and not the teams that they've previously had with the Chet Holmgrens, the Jalen Suggs, and those teams? Would this make more sense for this team to win, or is it just one of those? Hey, they got hot, but this is not the best Gonzaga team we've seen.
I think you got to get lucky here. I think it's very much about the draw. You got to get lucky. You got to have players not go down. Like again, Houston's the best team in the tournament. They're the favorite right now to win. They're plus 515 to win the tournament. The next favorite is Alabama, the overall number 1 seed at plus 650. The reason why Houston is the favorite is because they're the best team. The problem is they have an injury in their point guard, Marcus Sasser. He says he's going to be 100% by the time they play on Thursday. I actually, if I'm Coach Kelvin Sampson, I sit Marcus Sasser for game 1. Let him have all the way until Saturday to heal up. I don't let him do anything crazy because you're playing a 16 seed. You probably handle that 16 seed without any issues. So go ahead and let Sasser rest, get him to full strength or get him as much rest as possible to get him to full strength where he's not playing twice in 2 days. He's only playing once this next week. And then he'll have another 4 days off after that, after they play on Saturday. So it's going to be very much about how Kelvin Sampson manages Marcus Sasser's injury. He did say, I think it was today, he did say that he should be 100%. He was actually a game time decision for the championship game, for their conference championship game on Sunday. They decided to sit him. So again, I think they had just thrown in the towel. We're ready. They were basically saying, "Hey, look, we're focused on the bigger prize, and that's a national championship, not necessarily a conference championship."
What do you think the likelihood is that Kelvin Sampson would do that?
Oh, he came out and said it point blank. He said I'm going to err. He said I'm going to err on the side of sitting my best player because we're focused on what lies ahead, right? And so again, they played Northern Kentucky to start, a 16 seed. They should handle that game without Marcus Sasser by at least 10 points, 8 to 12, let's say. Um, and then they move on and get ready to play on Saturday. So an opportunity to get your best player, the player of the year in the conference, and a dynamic scorer. I watched him score 30 points in the quarterfinals, and he did it with ease. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they handle things there. That's the biggest question mark around kind of the top 4 teams. Again, Purdue's in a situation where if Edey gets in foul trouble or he rolls an ankle or whatever, that team is toast. That team is toast. So, um,
Is Zach Edey one of those bigs that they could easily just play off the floor? Not necessarily with foul trouble, but he's 7'4". He's so big, he's massive. Can a team kind of go small and run him off the court?
I don't think a team can go small and run him off the court. I just don't think they've got. I mean, Memphis is the team that could potentially do it, but they've got the guys that can play with them. Is the thing? Like they've got guys that can handle Edie. They don't have soft guys in the paint by any means at Memphis. I watched what they did against U of H. They crushed the offensive glass in the second half of that game to really put that one away. And again, it just goes back to Big Ten teams have really great regular seasons, and then
And
they
they
struggle
stink
when
in
they
March
get in
Madness.
March Madness. So if you're right penciling in Purdue as your champion or in your Final Four, you're holding your breath in any bracket pool that you're in, because I I don't think that's smart business in any way.
I mean, what was it? Was it 2000 the last time a Big Ten team won a national title? Michigan State.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
Jesus, I'm not gonna lie. You're really convincing me of picking Memphis to beat them, or at least putting money on Memphis. If Memphis advances, I might put some money on a Memphis, not money line, just to be safe, but definitely a Memphis spread, just to see. I wonder what Vegas would do with a Memphis Purdue game in terms of the line. Do you think it would be, a very small line of like maybe 2.5, 3, or do you think they would give Purdue the benefit of the doubt for having Edie and being a 1 seed and potentially putting it at like a 5.5, 6?
5.5. It'd
You
be
think they would do that?
it'd be 5.5.
And are you taking Memphis in a heartbeat?
Yes. Running to the window, taking Memphis at 5.5.
Perfect. That's all I need to hear in terms of Memphis.
The thing you got to worry
So
about, the thing you got to worry about in college basketball is because college teams aren't great free throw shooters, you play the foul game at the end of every game essentially, right? So unless it's a blowout, we're at the foul line and we're playing, who can make 2 out of 2 free throws, every time down the line. That's essentially what it is. Completely different game than the NBA. NBA free throws are almost automatic, whereas in college, 50% of the time, a player's missing one, if not both.
yeah,
So that's why March Madness is so crazy because teams down 10 with 2 minutes to go are not out of it yet.
just play the foul game and got 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds going up to the free throw line in the biggest games of their lives in front of national televised audience, in front of that 50,000 people, and you got to go up there and make 2 free throws. Or it's worse, you got to make it's a 1-and-1 situation, and the pressure is you got to make one. If not, you lose possession.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, so I wanted to go over my Final Four picks and see what you have for your Final Four picks. Brackets came out on Sunday. It's my Even though I don't watch college basketball, it's still one of my favorite times just to fill out a bracket and do predictions. Now, I originally had Tennessee in the Final Four just because of what I heard in the beginning of the season. I will be changing that after this podcast. Don't you worry. Okay, I will be changing it after this podcast. Now, the other 3 teams I had for the Final Four are Alabama, Houston, who I have winning it all against Alabama, and UCLA. How do we feel about that Final Four?
I'm not upset with the Final Four. Um, I'm definitely in a different boat than you. I actually misquoted earlier. I actually have just one number 1 seed in the Final Four.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
So let me hear your Final Four. Let's hear it.
Arizona out of the South. I'm going to go with Marquette out of the East. I'm going to go with Gonzaga out of the West.
Okay.
Houston out of the Midwest. And it
And who's the
pains me
national
because I
title
think
game?
it pains me because Houston's the best team, but I think Texas should have been in a position to potentially go to the Final Four. Before the season, I said Texas and Houston would both go to Houston and play in the Final Four. It's a shame that they got put in the same bracket.
Do you think that's why they did it? Because they didn't want to have 2 Texas teams
I'm not
in the
sure.
Final Four?
I'm not sure if that played a role in it. It could have, to be honest with you. Um, but yeah, I think I think Texas is very capable of going to the Final Four. I would not be shocked at all if Texas beat Houston. Um, but that's a team that can play for sure.
So a
And
quick.
and just a note on that, if you wanted to get on Texas to win the national championship, it's 14.5 to 1 right now.
Mm, that. Hey, you might be making that a little bit difficult for me because I do have Houston winning, but that sounds like a good bet. That sounds like a good bet, especially with a team that's hot and has proven themselves to be winners this season. And it's just that they got unlucky with the draw, but who they could easily beat a Houston team if any given night. You know, but it's March Madness; anything can happen.
I'll probably
I wanted
wait
to.
I'll probably wait until Houston and Texas play each other, and then whenever the spread comes out for that game, I'll probably take the team that's getting points.
Got it.
Yeah. That's a
You,
game where I'm probably taking the team that's getting points.
that might be like a +1.5 though.
Depends. I could see Houston
So
being favored by 3.5 in that game.
really, you think so?
Yeah.
If Texas goes on this run and makes it to the Elite Eight, you think they would actually put it at 3.5?
Texas won't have to beat anybody.
Who's the 3 seed in that region?
It is Xavier.
Are they good or how
They're
are they?
good, but they're not Texas good. Like there is it's Houston, Texas just below them, and then whoop, Xavier, and then whoop, everybody else way down below.
So this is a Houston
Yes,
Texas clash.
yes, that's
Okay,
that's the one you can almost pencil in.
got it. Okay. So for a team like UCLA, are they? I know UCLA. They're kind of a little bit flashy now. I know they have Amari Bailey who is like big on social media and stuff like that. But are they a flashy freshman team, or do they have the upperclassmen that can kind of balance things out? I know they do have Jamie or I forgot to say his name,
Yaquez.
um, Yaquez, and I know they have Tyre Campbell who were on that Final Four team. So do they have that perfect balance of veteran plus freshman? And can they make a run to the Final Four?
So they absolutely can make a run. I think they'll ultimately play a really tight game with Gonzaga as in the 2-3 matchup in the Sweet 16. Okay. Um, that being said, if a team can figure out that Bailey is a left-handed player, he likes to get to his left, and it looks so different when you're guarding it because you're just not thinking about it, right? But in the Sweet 16, you're potentially in a spot where you get 4 days to prepare for that game, and there's going to be a team like a Mark Few who can coach his players. Hey, we are taking away Amari Bailey's left hand, and if you can do that, you're going to cause a lot of problems for UCLA. That is where I
Hey,
think
his
they
dominant
they're not
hand
deep.
is the hand he uses.
They're not deep on the front line either. So that's a team that can really struggle with a guy like Drew Timmy, who this is his revenge tour. He's out for blood at this point. So a big like Drew Timmy who could really cause some problems down low, get some people in foul trouble. UCLA's not deep on the front line. They get a couple guys in foul trouble. This could be, it could be a big game for Drew Timmy, 25, 30-point effort. And that's going to be tough to overcome if you're UCLA playing a 2-3 matchup in the Sweet 16.
So who do you have for the national title game? It's Houston versus who? Who do you think it is?
I'm going to say Houston versus Arizona.
And who comes out as the winner?
Houston.
So you think the favorite is actually going to be able to pull it off?
Yeah, I do. I think this is one year where there's been kind of 2 or 3 teams at the top for most of the year, and one of those teams is going to take it home.
If Texas beats Houston in the Elite Eight, does Texas win it all?
That game is the championship game. Yeah.
Wow.
That game is the
Wow.
championship game. In my eyes.
In your eyes. Okay. That's fair. But outside of them,
Texas has shown the ability to win games against really good teams this year. Problem is they had to deal with a coach being fired.
That's right. He did get fired.
Stuff. Yeah.
And since he's gotten fired, have they obviously they won the conference championship. So does it seem as though like nothing has changed even with Chris Beard being gone?
Yeah, Chris Beard's gone, but Rodney Terry's taken over. And while there was an adjustment period, the team, I think the team is playing kind of on all cylinders at this point. Unlike we talked about Tennessee earlier, how Tennessee was kind of struggling to reach the end of the season, Texas was a team that kind of hit that valley in the middle, dealing with all the stuff off the field, I mean, off the court. And then they've just been steadily ascending. And ultimately it showed. They went on the road to Kansas late in the season, got a win at Kansas, and then they beat Kansas to win the Big 12 title in Kansas City. So they have shown they can play with anybody, and they should be pretty proud of their season going into March Madness. And yes, I do believe the Elite Eight matchup in the Midwest, the winner of that matchup will win the national title.
Hey, you heard it here first, folks. Texas Houston, probably the national title game. So look out for that. Derik, thank you so much for coming in and giving us some great insight of what we should look for March Madness, what we should be looking for in terms of betting, in terms of what we should do with our brackets. Definitely might have to link up for a Sweet 16, Elite 8 type of episode after, the first weekend of games and just, kind of recap and see where our heads are at because who knows? Who knows if 15 seed beats a 2 seed or 13 seed goes on a run. We don't know. Anything can happen in March Madness. It's very unpredictable. So expect the unexpected when it comes to March Madness. So I want to tell everyone thank you for joining into another episode with Hoops with Coop. Definitely check out the socials. Definitely check out the other podcasts. Check out the Discord. Just please support and subscribe to the channel. We're just going to keep pushing along, making new content out there. Derik, do you have anything to plug?
Thank you for having me on, Noel. I mean, obviously, every time I get a chance to come on the show, I really enjoy it. Our conversations have always been great. When it comes to that stuff, I'm really excited about March Madness this year. Uh, cool thing about me is my birthday happens to happen in March, so it's always kind of a tradition to kind of take in March Madness around some birthday festivities. So I will be doing that. Definitely March Madness will be. I'll be taking in all of March Madness on Friday. Got some stuff going on at a couple different places, but definitely be enjoying some green beer as it's St. Patrick's Day on Friday. I'll be in my green winning streak Cooper Sports winning streak shirt. We'll have that out there. We'll be rocking and enjoying all these. It'll be 16 games on Friday, so it'll be a full slate of games on Friday in the round of 64. So really excited about that. Yeah, would love to come and do another show after kind of the first round games have been done. I think this is prime season for basketball and a basketball podcast such as yours. So can't wait to talk more college basketball and looking forward to the NBA as it gets into April and get ready for the playoffs.
Thank you so much for joining. Can't wait to talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone. And don't forget to sub. Do not forget to sub and grow this channel a lot more. Take care, everyone. See ya.